Hello, and welcome to Designing the Flipped Classroom Beyond Videos. My name is Melissa, and I'll be your host today. When we began designing this presentation for you for this upcoming Congress on Friday, I began to think about, well, I'm going to want to talk to you about the flipped classroom. I want to explain what it is and all these kinds of good things, but what is the best thing to do is to experience a flipped classroom for yourself. So this is what we're doing. So I hope everyone's going to have a chance to watch the videos and interact with the questions that I've interspersed in amongst them. And then on Friday, we're going to continue on with this topic, but more from an interactive, activity-based point of view. And then I have some special bonuses and extra little know-hows for you. Just as a bit of a recap, though, the flipped classroom actually describes a reversal of traditional teaching where the learners gain first exposure to new material or content outside of the class, usually via readings or lecture videos like this, and then class time is often used to do harder work of assimilating that knowledge through strategies such as problem solving, discussion, and debates. So the real purpose here of the flipping the classroom is then to shift from a passive to an active learning, to focus on this higher order thinking such as analysis, synthesis, and evaluation, things that you'll find right here in the Bloom's taxonomy. So typically then what happens, as I had previously mentioned, is that students are accessing the key content individually outside of the classroom. And then when they do meet face-to-face in larger groups, they're really exploring that content through active learning and engagement strategies. So let's look at this further. Let's look at what the myth versus the reality of the flipped classroom is. So let's first look at what the flipped classroom is not. It is not synonymous with online videos. So when most people think about this, they think, oh, it's all about the videos. Well, the videos, yes, are important and they're useful, and that's the core content. But what you'll notice through what I'm doing here and also through the videos that I've sourced that you're looking at that were produced by others is that content is cheap nowadays, and we can find it just about anywhere through Googling. Unless, of course, it's highly proprietary and those kinds of things. And while it is important to have good content, it is much more about what happens in that classroom. So the flipped classroom is not necessarily synonymous with online videos. It's not about replacing teachers with videos. It's not about being an online course. It's not about working without structure. And it's not about spending the entire training or class time staring at a computer screen. And it's not about students working or learners working in isolation. So what really is the flipped classroom? Well, first and foremost, it's a means to increase interaction and personalized contact time between the learners and the instructors. It's an environment where learners take responsibility for their own learning. And this is where the classroom is where, in this classroom, the teacher is really the guide on the side. They are no longer the sage on the stage. And it's a real blending of direct instruction with constructivist learning. It's also an environment where if a learner isn't able to attend, they're not going to be left behind. And see, these are classrooms where the content is permanently archived for review or remediation. So revision. They can go back, people can pause, they can stop, start, all those kinds of good things. And this is also a place where learners are engaged in their learning. There's no more of these glazed over looks or hiding in the back of the room because they're actually active and engaged. And ultimately, this is a place where the learners can get a personalized education or instruction in the content. So what are some of the key elements of the flipped classroom? Well, first, the flipped classroom provides an opportunity for learners to gain first exposure to the content prior to entering the classroom. It provides an incentive for learners to prepare because, again, they can't hide. The third reason is to provide a mechanism to assess learner understanding, and also to provide in-class activities that focus on these higher level cognitive thinking processes. Now let's look at and consider some of the best practices that surround flipping your classroom. I want to emphasize one thing here, and that is flipping your classroom is not an easy task. It's not the easy way out. It's not throwing up some videos and then, not having to worry about creating content and having appropriate instructional design. That is actually far from the truth. The content delivery aspect of it is probably the easier part, just because of the plethora of resources that are out there and available. Now, granted, for many corporate or workplace environments, there's some proprietary material that is just it's not something that you can just pull off the shelf. It is something that you will have to create. Fair enough. But the hard part here is figuring out really what to do in the class to keep your learners engaged, and also motivating them to prepare for the class in the first place. When I actually flipped my classroom at the university level, what I found, even though I spent a lot of time discussing this with the students, is that they just thought, oh, this is good. I have lecture. I don't in these videos. I don't really have to watch it. I'll show up and I'll just do the activities. And then oftentimes I would have blank looks, because I would actually be requiring them to apply and actually utilize the knowledge and the content that they should have previously watched, and lo and behold, they were kind of clueless, and I found myself doing a mini lecture in the middle of class. So there is something about preparing your learners ahead of time and really emphasizing what this is, how it works, and what the expectations of them are. Also, flipping the classroom in the moment is not necessarily the easiest thing to teach either, because you as a trainer need to really know your content inside and out, because you're going to find that there are teaching moments, as I call them, or other people call them just-in-time teaching, whereas as the learners are engaged in the activities of the simulation, whatever it happens to be that they're working on, the questions are going to arise, not just about the activity, but oftentimes about really exploring a concept that you may have talked about in the lectures, but really needs to be have that teaching moment and provide more depth to it. So you really need to be able to think on your feet. You need to be able to adapt to the unexpected, and be as engaged with them as they are with you. One last thing to emphasize in terms of the best practices with flipping your classroom, and that is the activities and the structure of the in-class time. It is absolutely imperative that you put sound instructional design practices into place and structure your face-to-face time in such a way that it will keep people engaged, that will help them reach those higher levels of higher order thinking, that will get them to engage with, apply, and with the content that you have, and ideally have them collaborating with each other. So you have not, let's say you have a quiz, or you have a series of quizzes, but then you have them peer evaluate. There's examples in English classes, as an example, where the students take the time to write 20 minutes of the class, and they write a short essay on whatever the teacher gives them. Then they exchange it, and they get peer critiqued in the moment. Things along those lines. But whatever you do, that face-to-face time needs to be highly structured. It needs to be very well thought out, and you need to keep people doing things along that time, or in that time.